Look out! It's just two middle-aged geeks trying to protect the hive.
I like that. I like that you're branching out a little bit. Now we're going to get sued by Brett Goldstein and Jason Statham.
That was the plan.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah, because I figure if I can get both of their attention, maybe they'll be on the podcast with us one day.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
I'd love to do like a whole run of Jason Statham film with Jason Statham. That'd be phenomenal.
Dude, are you kidding me? I just want to hang out with that guy. He just seems so fucking cool. Like,
Absolutely.
I've been watching so many Jason Statham movies ever since I watched The Beekeeper for the first time. So I've been going back and revisiting a bunch of stuff. And it's like, we talk about like the 80s action movie is dead, but he's been making pretty much just 80s action movies his entire career, and I'm not mad about it. And like, yeah, they're not always the best, but like that's okay. Like Jason Statham 47 is just as fun as Jason Statham 22, which is just what I call these movies at this point, because let's call it what it is. Like they're just Jason Statham being Jason Statham in Jason Statham movies.
In Jason, yeah, exactly. I was saying beforehand, there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum of good versus bad, but they're all in that eminently watchable. Sit back, have a good time, and watch Jason Statham blow up things and talk in a way that makes me question my sexuality, because
correct. I have a low key man crush on Jason Statham that I don't think is so low key, and I think that's most people.
Yeah, he just got that way he talks, the way he acts, and you love watching him do his thing. And he is the premier. I think it's safe to say he's the premier action guy right now. I think, honestly speaking, maybe Gerard Butler has his thing.
Him, Butler, Scott Adkins, and
he's kind of lesser. He's kind of like not as.
Yeah, but he's still doing the thing, right? Like, I would argue that the Scott Adkins movies are equally as like that. They're the like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You know what I'm saying?
Office draw, like that kind of thing, but he's still kind of a.
Statham's like our top tier A guy, and then there's Jerry B, who's like right there with him. But then like you got guys like Grillo, and then you got guys like Adkins who are just like, we're doing it too, but we're doing it in like almost like the B sort of way, where Frank Grillo's like, let me fight them werewolves, man. And you're like, cool, man, you go fight them werewolves. Like, we're not going to say no because it's Frank Grillo.
I figured Bernthal could be that, but he does more franchise and more like other spots. I feel like Bernthal could be that.
I think Bernthal really, it sounds so mean, and I don't really mean it this way, but like he really fancies himself like real actor.
I know what you mean.
I don't mean it to come off the way that sounds, but like he fancies himself as like a real actor who's doing like Denis Villeneuve films.
Like he's too good.
Don't see Scott Adkins doing that.
Right. He thinks he might think he's a little bit too good for those kind of roles. And so I get that to a degree.
Yeah.
Punisher is a little bit heady because it's a Marvel thing. He can kind of do that. I get that away.
Yeah. And he actually is like forcing himself to act, even though there's times when you watch any of the Punisher stuff, you're like, why is his go-to just screaming? Like Frank Castle really probably wouldn't be doing that, but like that's fine.
Right. You're not wrong.
That is always my one thing with, I love him as the Punisher, but every time that he starts screaming and I'm like, my guy, Frank Castle's more like, yeah, just bring it down. Like we're gonna Ross and Friends it, bring it down. Because that's not really how Frank operates. He's really like a quieter, meaner, less wordy dude a lot of the time in the comics.
Right. Yeah.
Like he inner monologues and he writes war journals. Like the dude can talk to himself in a journal of pages.
Absolutely, 100%.
So there is that. I have liked him being back in Daredevil, even though it's only been a single episode so far. And I think that the finale of that is tonight.
No,
two more.
It's
9 episodes. Okay. 9. Okay, so 8 is today.
We should date ourselves, by the way, because this is a Patreon exclusive. This is not coming out until next week. So actually, technically speaking, Daredevil's finale just came out last night from when we're debuting this. Actually, no, I'm sorry, a week and a half ago at this point, because it's every other week we do that.
And for everyone else in the future, the season's been over for a while, but we know it's at least been renewed because they're filming it right now.
Well, let's be honest. Was it renewed, or was it just kind of like we're going to take your one season and split it up into two? Let's be
Well,
honest.
that's exactly what it was, because wasn't it announced as, like, 18 episodes
18,
run, I think, or something like
yeah,
that?
something really long, or even more than that. I think it might have been like a 20-episode run or something like that. Like, no,
But
you're
at
not going
least
to do
they're
that
doing
anymore.
the thing that they are doing the thing that apparently every other fucking streaming service hasn't figured out, which is weird because Ahsoka also is on the same streaming service, and we're gonna wait 3 years between seasons, which go fuck yourselves. But,
Mhm.
like, at least we're getting Daredevil
Yeah,
next year.
yeah.
Reacher has been really good at that too. Like, Amazon's really good at already being well into production on another season by the time that the new season ends.
Well, I feel like what used to happen. Well, Reacher is like the throwback old school primetime TV show. This is
Yes.
what TV used to be. You had a season, you came back, you had a next season. Came back every year there was a new season. That's how it was. The streaming thing is so different now, but I feel like it'd be better if shows would say, you know what, let's commit to 16 episodes at whatever how many millions of dollars you have, and then you just split it into 2 seasons. And then if it tanks and like it doesn't really do well, you have a second season that's already done. So you put it out there and maybe because a lot of times like you can build an audience sometimes. Sometimes you get a season and like it doesn't have your complete audience. Also, when the second season comes out, people go back, they watch things, and audiences get built. Then you can make a
Yeah.
decision at that point if you want to go keep going further. You can see you have a longer bit of time to decide whether to move on from that second season in a way. I think it's an easier way to do it at this point. Makes a lot of sense to me, but who knows? What do
No,
I know?
we were talking about it before we were live, but Stranger Things has been on for 10 years, but we haven't even gotten to the 5th season yet. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, those kids don't even look like they're in high school at this point because
We
they're
don't
not
even have a
kids anymore.
date. We don't have a date for the 5th season yet.
Millie Bobby Brown is married.
I know.
Like,
Which is like 12 or 11 when this thing started? You're like,
yeah, it's just so wild to me. And
yeah,
I don't know, man. It's just a lot of dragging feet. I feel like there's the gluttony of pushing to just get things out there also tanks like the thought process of also being more timely. It's like I worry about that a little bit with Fear Street because I really love those Fear Street movies. And we got them all in the height of COVID over 3 weeks on Netflix. And like it was cool. It was so different as like a release schedule and all this stuff.
right.
And then they waited so long
It
to
seems
do a
like,
fourth
how do you
one.
follow up? Why are you following this way? It's like so ridiculous. And you know what? We should talk about it real quick. I mean, we have another podcast about it, but Doctor Who is the same way for us. We know
Yeah.
this. Like
No,
we had
I
Russell.
was trying not to get into the Doctor Who of it all because it's just making me sad.
It is. Well, I'll be brief in case you don't know. We have, by the time you see this on Patreon, we've already probably covered the first 2 episodes of Doctor Who, the new season. But when RTD, it's amazing how quickly this thing kind of deteriorated from us. When we came back, RTD was announced to come back after the disastrous, well, mostly disastrous Chibnall run with Jodie. Not her fault. Love Jodie.
No,
Love the cast.
Cody was great. That was the biggest bummer of it
Yeah,
all.
yeah, she was great. I love the master. His name. I'm blanking on his name right
Sasha
now.
Darwin,
Sasha Darwin. That's right. He was great as
or
well.
Darwin.
Um, but the promise was RT for a long time. Doctor Who had been similarly fluxed with this kind of like, and no pun intended, with these kind of release schedule. We'd have like a release a year. We'd have to wait a year and a half, 2 years. We'd maybe get a special, and then it was ridiculous at that point. But then RTD got announced to come back. He was like, "We're going to come back. We're doing Christmas special. We're doing once a year. We're going to have no long gaps anymore." And here we are. We had season 1, a special. Season 2 is coming out, and then we don't know. We have a spinoff coming, Land of the Sea, Land in the War,
The
and
war between the land and
Land
the
and
sea.
Sea. Can never get that title right for whatever reason.
Well,
And
because it's
then
long-winded and not not the best title.
it's a horrible title. I got to be honest with you. But then we're like, what's happening next? RTD doesn't even know. We're like, we have to wait for season 2 to finish before we maybe get a season 3. And then if we do get a season 3, it's like they gotta start then to process it, and like so that means there's no chance we're getting a third season a year from now.
Yeah,
Even if the
it's
scripts are written, or they'll say have to make sure the cast is in place and everything else.
well, and with all the rumors about the cast and stuff right now too, like I don't want to
Mhm.
get too far into it because this is, like I
Come
said, it
watch our
just
other
kind of makes me
podcast.
sad.
Come watch
Yeah,
our
I don't
podcast.
know. I hope for the best. Obviously,
Yeah,
I'll say the early reviews for the first episode do not strike me with confidence either.
they've been
Um,
mixed. Definitely
But
remix.
it's at the same time, I'm, like, giving it a little leeway because I tend to find that the season openers usually are pretty weak in Davies runs. They, historically, they always kinda have been because, like, you started with what was it? New like, not the Christmas episodes, mind you, but,
The
like,
new
usually
York.
the season openers, and so, like, the New York episode is not the best.
Right.
The Sontarans on the Moon episode, Smith and
Not the
Jones,
best.
not the best. So, historically, I think the only one that was actually pretty good was the season 4 opener, with the adipose. I've always felt like that one lands pretty well, all things being equal.
Now it's
But
helped with the return of Donna Noble, I think.
well,
That
and that's
part
what I
of
was gonna
what
say, is that
yeah.
it helped with the return of Donna Noble, and now with some other rumors that, like, they're potentially jockeying to try to also find a way to bring Tennant back for another season, and, like, you can tell that the writing on the wall right now is they're not, like, that thrilled with where the show is at, and it's a
Right.
bummer because I also am afraid we're losing Shooty and not for the right reasons.
Right.
If we're losing Shooty because he's super in demand and, his star is rising, it totally get it. That's fine. But the problem is it also kind of gives me more like Colin Baker being forced out of the role vibes.
It's funny, actually, 'cause I do see it as like 'cause all the rumors that I've read, all the things I've read, and this is again, these are all rumors that are not vetted. We have no idea if they're true or not.
No.
They've all basically been that he was going to leave because he can't commit to a schedule because he wants to make sure he has his options open. And more power to him. He's a young actor, wants to be able to do what he wants to do and not be trapped and
Yeah,
trapped
100%.
in a role, especially if one's like, well, we don't know when this is coming back. Well, I gotta act, I gotta do something. So, I gotta have something that's more sure than that.
It's,
Um,
it's so funny because like it just gives me the Brian Singer trying to do X-Men 3 vibes
mhm.
where where it was like, "Hey, we did really well. When are you gonna make the movie?" "Yeah, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." And they kept kicking the can down the road until he signed for another movie
Right.
just to move on without him.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so I hate to be the cynical guy but it's just that's kind of where my mind keeps going to it because I don't want to believe that obviously. I
Right.
love Doctor Who. I don't want Doctor Who to go away. And here's the thing. It's in a very different place also than it was when the stuff with McCoy and Baker and all of that was going on. Like
Right.
Doctor Who is still profitable for the BBC. It's
Right.
still their flagship show right now.
The
In
thing
the
about Doctor Who that I want to throw in there when you're talking
Yeah.
about the whole good thing is that you could do this show with the plethora of actors that are around. You could do a half Doctor show, like a half and half and half. Like you could have like an episode, like you mentioned the Tenant rumors. You could have Tenant come
Yeah.
back and do a slew of episodes, and then have Shooty come back for the last half kind of thing. Because
Yeah.
timing wimey, things happen like that. All of a sudden, Shooty goes off somewhere, and David Tennant has to fill in with the 14th Doctor. You can go all of a sudden, Shooty goes off and hits Paul McGann's era, has to leave and do something. And Paul McGann,
Yes.
you pick up with Paul McGann for a few episodes. No way to keep your actor. Like, sure, you could be the main doctor, but you could have like a fill-in doctor pitch in for a couple episodes here and there. It
Dude,
keeps it going.
it's so weird because I remember Davies talking about when he was not running the show, how he was like, we really should have more seasons where like you have two doctors together.
Yeah,
And they've never really done that. And so I kept kind of anticipating that being a thing, and we just never have that as a thing.
maybe
Like
that's the
we
answer. If we get a third season, maybe even if it's not Tenant, let's like put the Tenant aside because that's a whole other ball of wax. And I know some people are over Tenant and not like that he's
I'll never
bad,
be
but like
over him.
I love Tenant. I love
Yeah.
Tenant. Some people are kind of like, I don't want to see him revert back to Tenant. It feels like a Hail Mary. It feels like a cheap ploy kind of thing. I understand those
I do
thoughts.
think there's a story there to do it.
I think there is too. I think
Yeah,
there
so
absolutely is. But I think what if the decision is that we have to move on from Shooty, you could like have a new doctor come in and then they just split time.
well, I
I
mean,
get
that
that.
was we talked about it a bunch with the Giggle. One of the best things about the Giggle was it was the first time we'd seen the two doctors
Yeah,
like really interacting on a regeneration, and I loved that episode because it very masterfully, once that split happened, it
right.
really allowed Shooty to be the doctor for the rest of the episode with
Yeah,
Tennant doing Tennant things, and it was great and it worked. But I would love to see like a more palling around season of two doctors who are just in the TARDIS for whatever reason something happens and they're kind of on this like big adventure, and it would be a great way to get someone like McGann to come back.
right. I mean, you could
And
actually
the fact
have
that
like
McGann still hasn't really had that yet?
I know
Come
I feel
on.
bad for him. I feel really bad for him that he doesn't. he never had a full season. He didn't have full anything. I mean, he had Big Finish. That's really he had the one TV movie and then a couple of webisodes. Really, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, and he's had what 2 appearances basically since.
Yeah, that's true. He did make appearances in the
Because he did Night of the Doctor, and then of course he was in The Power of the Doctor.
Yeah, briefly, and that's what I mean. You should definitely
The Power of the Doctor, where it was like, oh, Chris Chibnall does like Doctor Who and can write it,
which is so weird. Which is the worst. Yeah,
your last episode, your 90-minute last episode, was the one time I was like, oh, he actually does like Doctor Who. That's so weird.
Actually, get it. You actually get it.
Yeah, I do feel like I do feel like people give it like the Fugitive Doctor thing. It really is overwrought. People are so weird about that. I've never had a problem with the Fugitive Doctor. I don't love the Timeless Child bit, but the Fugitive Doctor stuff is great because Joe Martin's awesome. And I kind of like that he's even said, he was like, the idea was not to say that it was necessarily pre-Hartnell. The idea is that you weren't supposed to know whether it was a past or a future incarnation, and even the future Doctor or even the Fugitive Doctor is not aware.
Yes, exactly. And that's the kind of a cool thing. There's some kind of trick in the mind that you do that. You could play with that for a bit, and that'd be a lot of fun to do it. For sure. You could have that, like we were talking about the seasons of the Doctor. Like imagine, like looking back to, I know this didn't exactly happen, but one of my son's favorite seasons was actually the Colin Baker one, the Trial of the Time Lords thing.
Dude, Trial of the Time Lords so good, honestly.
It is wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. And like you could have something like that with multiple doctors throughout the entirety of things. I mean, some people, would it cost more? I don't even know if it costs that much more, because it's like you're paying 2 doctors or 3 doctors, but it's like half the time they're actually making appearances. So it's like
right. It's also weird to me because I feel like every time you do a multi-doctor story, it tends to be a single episode.
Right.
But the multi-master story was multiple episodes.
Absolutely. And that was great and great fun. You had a lot of different like fun chemistry connections, seeing how they were going to react and everything else. I loved those.
Right. And so that's why I've never understood why we haven't we really just did turn this into a Doctor Who podcast.
Yeah, we gotta stop. We gotta stop. Go watch this.
Here's me catching us and going, this whole episode is just gonna be us talking about Doctor Who if we're not careful. Because also it's Doctor Who, and I could talk about it forever.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get in. You know what? Save the Doctor Who stuff. If you want to go listen to us and ramble about Doctor Who, I'm sure we actually probably did a very long first episode of Doctor Who, because we have a lot to talk about before we get into the season premiere. So that'll be the Big Blue Box with PJ Campbell and PLD. And that's already out there, probably. By the time you see this, it's definitely already out there.
Is it, though? Is the premiere this weekend, by the way? That feels so weird. It's coming out so out of nowhere.
That means we're recording next Monday. Monday night.
Are we also recording Tuesday morning?
I believe we are.
There's no world. No world. Damn you. Anyway, doing that live on air.
Let's talk about this.
Oh my God. Anyway. So Predator released a trailer for an animated movie today, and it looks really good.
It really does. Dan Trachtenberg directing, obviously co-directing. The wonderful job.
If you're listening to this in November, the movie is come and gone at this point. We'll find out if it was actually good or not already. But it's just funny to say that out loud now, where it's like, yeah, the trailer dropped today. It looked really good. Like, we've heard about it for a bit, and it looks badass.
It really did. I like the animation style, and it proves everything you want a Predator film to be. The animation allows them to go deeper with some of the gore, some of the ideas that have been floating around for a while. It looks great.
We get Predator versus Samurai, like everybody's been wanting for a while. There's some like cool World War II stuff going on. Looks like Predator versus like Vikings also, like just very, very cool. Dan Trachtenberg seems to have his pulse on the franchise, and I like that they even said, they were like, animation allows us to make stuff even more sweeping and bigger and do it well, and not go like crazy over budget to do this. So it allows us to play with it, and it's like, yes, more of that. Like, that's what we've all been saying for so long, like with Indy and Star Wars and all these things. lean in on animation. Like, make an animated Star Wars film, man.
Yes, I would love that. That would be so great. And the Clone Wars
Yes.
was there, but like that's not what we mean. The Clone Wars was just a couple episodes of Clone the show that they just threw together to make a
Yeah.
feature. Make an actual feature.
Yeah. Like, look, with all those rumors about Heir to the Empire being the Dave Filoni movie,
Mm,
and the idea that you might potentially be bringing back certain
characters.
characters, guess how you could do that without having to de-age and do deep fake and all that shit?
Mhm.
Just animate it.
I have been throwing it out there for a long time. It
I've
makes
been saying
no
it
sense to
forever.
me. Not only even movie wise, if you talk about TV show wise, the next animated show should be a post Return of the Jedi, Luke building the Jedi Temple
Oh,
storyline
100%.
because it's the way you can have a story with Luke, Han, and Leia without having to worry about like
You
like
can
you
get
said, the de-aging and stuff.
very good voice actors for it if they don't wanna do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet they could toss Mark Hamill somebody to do the voice of Luke Skywalker if he wanted to. They could even DH his voice a little bit if they wanted to. But I think he
Yeah.
could do it and be fun. I think it'd be great.
Well,
And what a
and they
great way to
had someone voice Leia in Rebels who was real good.
yeah, yeah,
And, I mean, we clearly know that there are people who can sound like Harrison Ford, as it turns out with, The Great Circle Game. I mean,
yeah,
honestly, you could just hire him to do it.
100%.
Troy Baker.
Trey Baker, yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah,
it's right there for you, and those are the things that people want to see. I mean, that's like some of the best, some of the like the biggest like accusations or whatever criticisms of the sequel trilogy was the fact that we never got Han, Luke, and Leia together again. Which I understand that everyone wants to see their favorite heroes growing up together. We can get those stories and get them done animated wise, and they'll be wonderful. Because Star Wars animation honestly doesn't miss. Bad Batch was great. Clone Wars is great. Rebels was great. Visions is a lot of fun. I mean, it really hasn't missed, honestly.
and we get Visions 3 this year?
Correct this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Gonna get a good
I
look at
like
that,
Visions
and
a lot.
I've heard a rumor that we because the rumor is now that animation Star Wars is going animation in the near future, kind of like to make up
Mhm.
for lack of live action shows. I've heard the rumor of a new show and a second show, which would be a full like 8 episode run for that Ronin from Vision season one. Like
Yeah, there'd been a lot of rumors about Ronan, because I know the voice actor had been saying that he'd heard some stuff, but he wasn't allowed to talk about it, so that
right.
makes a lot of sense.
I would love to see that an 8 episode run with a completely different style, with that style and everything else in the universe. It's a way to expand the universe in a way that we would need it to expand. I think.
Well, it's the thing that I would argue that I think Marvel also should have been doing more of. Like, and don't get me wrong, I really liked What If for the most part. I thought season 3 was a little more shaky,
Yeah.
but they're also not using it in a way to advance the stories. They're
Agreed.
doing it as one-off type stuff. Like, I finally started your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man
Mm,
on your recommendation,
yeah,
and I'm really enjoying it.
yeah.
With the caveat being that it's not our Peter,
Right,
like it's a movie in another universe,
right. Yeah,
or a TV
absolutely.
show rather in another universe.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but why not try to do some storytelling in animation with some of these things? Because you could fill in a lot of different gaps that way. There's all sorts of ways to tell stories that
Yeah,
we may not necessarily get on the big screen.
100%. I totally agree with you.
Do it
And
in
there's
animation, and a lot of the clearly a lot of your actors are willing to come back and voice the characters because so many of them do in What If. I mean, dude, they even got Michael Douglas to come back. Like, I thought that was rad as shit.
yeah, absolutely. I kind of feel like, honestly, as much as I've enjoyed some of the Disney Plus TV shows, I really have enjoyed some of them. A lot of them feel lackadaisical to compare to like the movies per se. I think they some of them could have been done animated and been like. Can you imagine like Moon Knight having been animated?
Yeah,
Phenomenal that way. I think it would have been a great way to do that particular tale. A lot of them
yeah.
can be done that way, and it can be done a little bit cheaper and save money. Like it spreads it out a little bit. And I think that's the way it should go. To be honest with you,
Well, I
but
don't disagree. I also just want a sequel to Werewolf by Night already.
is that
Um,
ever going to happen? Is that ever going to be I haven't heard anything about that. I heard it briefly when it first came out, but then I haven't heard anything since.
um, I don't know.
Okay.
I think that everything that was kind of an idea ended up being a lot more in flux, and it's the conversation we've been having a lot, where there is some truth to like how Marvel is being looked at right now by people, and I do get what people are saying in some capacity, but we have to remember I don't put the onus on Kevin Feige. It was not Feige who overloaded the company. It was
Correct.
Disney chasing the streaming thing. It was Chapek pushing that they had to meet deadlines that they weren't ready to meet on shows they weren't even ready to make. It was Iger coming in and trying to force them to finish a lot of that stuff. And there's all sorts of things that happened.
On
So the
Marvel and
onus,
Star Wars, to be honest with
yes, right, exactly, on both sides of that.
you.
And I'd argue Pixar.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think all the subsidiaries of Disney got hurt very badly with the streaming service in some capacity.
Mhm.
And I think with also the reflection of how people are looking at the Marvel things and how things have gone the last few years, I think a lot of the other planned material has been pulled back on until they get past Secret Wars. And so whether that means Werewolf by Night getting another anything, because I feel like it was very clear the idea was Werewolf by Night was going to lead into Ghost Rider and Blade, and we were going to get like the underverse of Marvel, as it were.
Yeah,
You were going to lean
part
into
so,
this
yeah.
supernatural hardcore thing
Yep.
because Multiverse of Madness had already opened that door.
Right.
And so we were going to start leaning into that. Midnight Suns really looked like it was a thing. It was
Yeah.
getting looked at for a while. I just think that all chips got moved in one direction. And so now, if that was a thing, it has fallen by the wayside.
Agreed.
And that is just so that they can get through this next batch of everything. And for what it's worth, I get it. And honestly, credit where credit's due. I also think that Feige really is looking at this as like a grand finale in a lot of ways. And once it's over, it allows them to open the door to once again testing the waters to do other things.
Yeah.
But the pieces obviously are there for Midnight Suns when you already have Moon Knight, when you have Blade, when you have Man Thing, you have Werewolf by Night. You just throw Ghost Rider into the mix and you call it a day. And you've got two A-list actors who've both expressed interest in playing that character. Whether it was Keanu Reeves or Ryan Gosling, both those guys.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Honestly, though, speaking of, I know maybe you don't want this, but like, it almost sounds like that'd be a nice way to do things. Is go to animation with that in a way.
I
Well,
wouldn't hate that, don't get me wrong. I just desperately would love to see them all on the big screen together.
I get that. I get that for sure. I mean, Werewolf by Night was a lot of fun. Lot.
Werewolf by Night might be the best special that they did. I'll say this, the Marvel one-shots ended up being great, and I'm not talking about, like, the Coulson ones, but I'm talking, like, Werewolf by Night and the Holiday Special, and I'm hoping Punisher will follow that, trajectory because that is only the third one that they were gonna have done to this point.
That is also something I've been pitching for a long time in both that and Star Wars. Do
Yeah.
these like one-off streaming movies or like low budget or like limited run movies where they're like lower budget and like they can tackle these little lesser characters, but they have
Yeah.
their niche stories and everything else. You're not committing to any long form. I mean, it's better to do like a 90-minute special on a Star Wars character than trying to do like a full 8-episode season at this point. Like that's committing a lot of money. 8-episode seasons are not inexpensive. Doing one 90-minute episode, as it were, but just a little bit more
Yeah.
deluxe is probably the way to go. You could tell a great story in 90 minutes.
Well,
To
and,
like
like, the Guardians Holiday Special was a perfect example of they just bundled it into Guardians 3
yeah,
and called it a day, and that sounds like that's kind of what this Punisher one was too, is that it basically got folded into, like, they're doing it while they're doing Daredevil season 2, so it becomes, like, you can find ways to do it
yeah,
and make it work, and I just
yeah.
it's here's a perfect example of this. We're gonna be talking about Thor. It only took us 30 minutes to get to this. Today we're
Shocking.
talking about 2011's Thor, which is a great film.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, but there's characters in this movie who could have had a great Marvel one shot at one point, or an expanded television animated series, and that's the Warriors 3.
Mm-hmm.
Sif and the
Oh,
Warriors 3.
wonderful.
Like, you could
Absolutely.
have easily done more with them in some capacity, and we never got that, and it's weird because this is arguably the only film that actually gives them anything to do.
Yeah. It's sad that that's the case. That because I mean, Thor is so unique in the Marvel universe, especially at this time, like, and so much so that we're going to get into it. I think Marvel was afraid to commit to to being completely a Thor movie in a way. As far as like the mythology goes and the
Yeah.
lore goes and everything else, they were kind of scared to do that. Because like most comic book movies are, we mentioned that before when it comes to even Superman, Batman, they used to do like these more, we're going to ground these stories a little bit because we're afraid to do the comic booky stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff that we're excited about in this upcoming Superman movie, like the stuff that they're unabashedly, like unafraid or unashamed to be a comic book movie.
And it's so funny because I actually watched the like 20-minute making of that was on Disney Plus for it today, and I hadn't watched it since it hit Blu-ray probably.
Okay.
And I forgot they do straight up say there was a version of the movie at one point where it was going to be like the stuff on Asgard, and then you were going to do everything in like Viking era.
Wow.
And they straight up were like, no, we can't do that because it's too alien for people because now you don't know both worlds.
Right.
So the idea was to pivot to like, we can have Asgard, but then we have to ground it in like a more small town Americana type thing to try to make it so that we would buy the world.
Right.
But at the same time, they also, and I never really caught this, but it makes sense. They actually tried to create the town to look similar to Asgard. And so that's why it's like sweeping and open and different. And like the buildings are actually modeled to be a little similar.
Oh, okay.
So that like when it bridges and you're looking at it, you're like, oh, there is some like the
Connection.
way that some of the buildings are structured even look like the things on Asgard.
Oh, wow. Okay. I did not know that.
And I had never thought about that
Okay.
before.
Yeah, I never
And
even
I
did not
thought that
notice
was
it.
fascinating.
I wonder if it's a subconscious thing. Like maybe that's what works for
When
you. 'Cause I
it
didn't notice it.
No, and they said it was, like, very intentional to, like, create
Huh.
a link between them, and that's why if you look, like do you notice the mascot of the football team of the high
Uh,
school is the Vikings?
yeah, 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 yeah.
And the whole town's thing is kinda being high on, like, Norse mythology
Right.
and all these things, and that's you're in an area where there's nothing outside, and so they can lean on the stuff about constellations and
Right.
space, and it's open, and you'd be in the world where it was like it's the kind of spot on Earth that you could believe a bridge between here and there would make sense, and you would see like parallels to it. I just thought that was so interesting. I had never caught that before.
Yeah, I never caught that. I would not have caught that until you told me. I don't think I ever watched the back. I did get a chance to watch the behind the scenes. I try to always watch the behind the scenes if I can, but I
Yeah,
didn't get a chance to this time. What a great that's a great idea to do. I mean, like we said it in text afterwards, like this is definitely a tale of two movies, obviously because of that. There's the Asgard side of things and there's the Earth side of things, Earth kind of the side of things, which could have like tanked the movie. Honestly, it could
it
have really
actually
tanked the movie,
works.
but it does work, and I think it's strongly on the basis of that Hemsworth, Portman, they have great chemistry together and great camaraderie together. So you kind of like really buy into that and you get the world building, you get the Coulson of it all, who we already know and love from Iron Man already so far. You get the introduction of Hawkeye. So that's the Marvel side of things. It's like connecting things and building things out. So like enough to keep you like engaged with it. Um, but the
Here,
winner,
it's
God,
funny you bring that up. It's This movie is a lot of firsts.
yeah.
It's the first time we see Hawkeye.
Hmm.
It's the first time the movies aren't fully grounded. We're moving into, like, the more mythical realm. It's the first movie that gave us a Marvel one-shot,
Yep.
which was a
The,
funny thing happened on the way to Thor's
the,
hammer.
yep.
It's also the first time we see Jasper Sitwell, who also
Yes.
appears in the movie, who is a bigger character down the line within S.H.I.E.L.D. There's a lot of that stuff going on. It's the first time we really see Sam Jackson
Mhm.
interacting with other characters in the universe, and like you get this feeling that Shield is a lot more involved.
Right.
And I really like that. This movie is there's a lot of firsts to this movie.
Yeah. I mean, making Thor conceptually, if you told me we're making a movie about Thor, I'd be like, yeah, great. I love mythology. I love gods. I love all that kind of stuff. I want to see a god on Earth kind of thing. I love that kind of stuff. I mean, honestly, in a way, it's really
First
DC's
Tesseract sighting
version.
too.
Yes, first, yes. It's really DC's. It's a bit Marvel's version of Superman to a degree, as far as power set
Yeah.
goes, and being a god on Earth kind of thing. But then you told me, but we're gonna make it a fish out of water story as well. And you're kind of like, you're making almost like a comedy out of it. Like you're really making a comedy. Like, is that gonna work? But
There's a fish out of water element to it for
right.
sure.
But it definitely makes it to the point where, like, again, because Hemsworth is eminently likable in this,
Yeah.
for sure. Like, you do get taken along on the journey. And I will say part of the reason why you are taken along on the journey is Tom Hiddleston. Tom Hiddleston is
Oh.
phenomenal in this
So,
movie.
so here's what's so interesting. One, I thought you nailed something up front that I think gets lost a lot. There's a lot of people, and I remember even going back to when it came out, there was a lot of talk that Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth didn't have good chemistry, and I never understood that. I love them together.
I do too.
Um, and I like the characters a lot. And I think that a lot of what people think is bad or non-existent chemistry also just comes from it's two people from different worlds. And I really love that. And it really works, at least for me. I think that they're a lot of fun together.
I do too.
And I I I think that she in particular gets a bad rap within these movies. Now, granted, I do think in the second one she looks bored and like she doesn't want to be there, but I would argue that's all of them, and that's a thing we will get into with the second movie.
Right. I agree. I agree.
There's a reason that a lot of people don't love it, but then you look at Thor: Love and Thunder, and I look. Say what you will about the movie, she's really good when she comes back.
Yeah, and she wants to be there. It does seem like she really wants to be there for that one, and I think
Right.
we'll talk about that one later on. I think you and I are on the same page and might be on a minority on
Well,
that.
we're definitely in a
Shock
minority opinion on that movie, I think,
shocking, I
and
think,
that's
but
okay.
yeah,
Shocker,
absolutely.
you and I agreeing on a thing.
I know.
Um, but the one thing that this movie also has more than the others, weirdly enough, it's arguably of the first 3 Marvel films, the one with the biggest and best cast,
Mhm.
and it's also the first time, and again, not to, like, really lead the point, but it's the first time that these movies feel largely large in scope. It's the first time that it feels like this universe is grander than we've
Right.
seen it. Like, they really put the money into populating it with people you might recognize, and even if you didn't, they really, like, take on the role, but the world also feels like it's expansive and it's big, and you're really pulled into it because it's grand, and I gotta say, Kenneth Branagh directed this, and Kenneth Branagh is a hell of a filmmaker.
I wanted you to bring that. I waited for you to bring that up
Yeah.
because there was one. He was one of the few. Like, if you think about a director for this movie, he is one of the. He's got to be on the short list because of, like,
Mhm.
his Shakespearean history, which deals really much into Thor, Asgardian side of things.
Yes.
But he's got a real sense of, like, knowing of whimsy and wonder. You've seen him in the Harry Potter films, like his acting in the Harry Potter films, like, and well, the one film really. But he
Yeah.
has this kind of connection with material like that fantasy type material that he can make it work, make it fun, but yet not lose the grandiose side of things. And, like, that's what you need for Thor. Thor needs to be grand, and it has a danger when it goes to Earth of losing that grandness. But Rob never lets it dissipate all the way. It makes it go a little bit,
No.
but lets you go. But then it comes back, and you're like, okay, this is really in that
No, because it's
grandiose
always
sense.
kind of on the, like, sidelines, and we cut
Right.
back also a lot to the stuff happening in Asgard, which
Mhm.
is great because it allows you to remember that these 2 worlds are interconnected, the story is still very interconnected, like, we're never far away from what's going on, and he really takes that Shakespearean love, and this movie is such a Shakespearean tragedy in
Mm.
how he looks at, like, the fall of Thor, and all these things,
Right.
and it works, and it's good, and you know what? Even though Anthony Hopkins is clearly just being Anthony Hopkins in this, you
He's
couldn't have asked for better when it comes to someone playing Odin.
Honestly, I'd tell you, is much like, we're if you're it's just a, like, behind the scenes stuff here. We're doing this for Patreon exclusive. At the same time we're filming this, we're going every other week with the MCU. We're doing Superman right now, which, obviously happened 6 months ago. If you're not on Patreon,
Yeah.
um, I so see this connection between Marlon Brando playing Jor-El and Anthony Hopkins playing Odin. Similar kind of
Yes.
thing. They're both got, like, Anthony Hopkins, is he phoning it in a little bit? Maybe, maybe phoning it a little bit, but like he just has that kind of gravitas, that kind of chemistry that he can just pull it off, and he doesn't need to. He just is that cool, that like his chemistry is off the charts just in real life. So just putting him in that
Yes.
role, letting him speak these lines, and you're going to get a good performance or a good role out of him. And he is. He does. He serves as that focal piece of majesty. You believe he is Odin, king of the
Well,
gods.
and if you're gonna ask one dude to give you like the entire backstory of a war between the Frost Giants and Asgard and deliver exposition, you can't do worse than
Can't
Anthony
go wrong. You
Hopkins.
can't go wrong by giving Anthony Hopkins the role. Absolutely.
Like
Love that aspect.
it works and it's really really good. And I would argue to the point that you made earlier, that's also where Tom Hiddleston comes in. And
100%.
Hiddleston is such an interesting piece of this puzzle because he originally was going up for the role of Thor.
Yeah.
He auditioned for Thor. He did not audition for Loki.
That's
And
so
they realized that that was their guy.
hmm
And the thing is that he is also quite a classically trained actor
right.
in the same way that Hopkins is. He's done a lot of Shakespeare, he's done a lot of stage work. So having someone like him going off of someone like Hopkins and then someone like Hemsworth who plays the role of Thor exactly as he needs to in this movie, which is kind of a dude bro-y version of the character
hmm
who is vain, arrogant, like
Brash.
brash. Yeah, he's basically the drunk football player from your high school who didn't grow up.
He's the quarterback. Yep, he
He
is
is
the
the
quarterback.
quarterback. He peaked in high school and he has stayed there ever since.
hmm
So they really lean on having two powerhouse actors around Hemsworth that allows the like emotional crux of so much of the story to be played out by these two Shakespearean actors while Hemsworth is doing great work as Thor, but he's doing like the buddy comedy dude bro thing, the
Right.
like fish out of water stuff. But these two elevate the material and you go, man, it is real good because they make it feel real good.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to expand. I mean, Tom Hiddleston, let me tell you, I'm going to point blank say it. People love Thanos, understandably. Loki is my favorite MCU villain still to this day. You can argue that
Loki is your favorite?
Loki is my favorite. Yeah, I will say I understand the argument that becomes more like heroic and more of an anti-hero. I get that. When it comes down to it, you look at Loki in this film. To me, this is the greatest MCU villain. The emotion is there, like when his backstory comes into play. You see like this, like you can empathize just enough with them to see where he went wrong, and yet you see the decisions he makes, and you're just like, oh, but the emotion, like that scene with him and Anthony Hopkins when he finds out that, that he was stolen from the Frost Giants at birth, like it's palpable. There is
Yeah.
that tension there is palpable, and I would say Hiddleston almost outacts Anthony Hopkins in that particular scene. Almost like it is just really powerful moment, and he has this like sense of like chemistry with Christopher Hemsworth that's there when it needs to be. He's got this little bit of arrogance, a little bit of like a shit weasel thing that goes on as well because he's not as powerful as Thor. We know this. But like he takes all this, wraps all this up. He has to be a shit weasel to Thor, but he has to be a powerful god to like all the humans and everything else. And he manages
Mhm.
to make it work all the way through. And when you see him on that throne for the first time with his big ass ears and everything, you're like, damn, you take stock of him. And I
Yeah.
think Marvel villain is kind of like we haven't had a Marvel villain before this that was any worth any near the amount of
Well,
salt that
that
this is.
right. That was the thing is like arguably the only one that we both agree on. We love Tim Roth in The
Yes,
Incredible Hulk,
we did. Yeah,
and
I would
we
say for
like William
years.
Hurt.
Right,
But again, I would argue that they're not like amazing villains,
right.
right? Like they're very good and very serviceable in their movie. But this is the first time I really feel like it's palpable just what a great shit weasel and how good he is. And it's also because Hiddleston just dude, he tears it up every time he's on
Yeah.
screen. That moment when the Sif and the Warriors 3 realize that Loki is the one who let the
Right.
Frost Giants into Asgard
Yes.
and they go to stop him and he, they're going to Odin basically to be like, hey, we're gonna tell him what happened, and they have no idea he's fallen into the Odin sleep.
Right.
And they walk in and they see Loki on the throne.
That's what I meant. That first time you see
Yeah,
him, yeah.
dude, and you
Oh,
just and the way he says it, "You can bring any of your problems to me," and the way he says it, and you're like, "Oh my god, he's just gonna murder them, though."
right.
Like,
Oh god.
he knows that they're trying to double cross him. They
Mhm.
know that he knows that they know, and, like, he just, he delivers it so well, and Jamie Alexander is, like, very good in that scene,
Right.
playing off of him, and, like, the restraint that she has to show in those moments, and they, like, basically have to drag her out is so good. Um,
100%.
this movie would not work if it wasn't for Hiddleston, and you have to say, man, the fact that he has had such a run as the character, and they have found ways to continually bring him back and make the character have interesting journeys, whether it's him becoming a hero, whether it's him, finding his glorious purpose.
Mhm.
Um, the way that they've done that over and over again over the last 20 years or 15 years, I guess, rather, is pretty fucking good.
I'm gonna say point blank, he had a great ending in Loki season 2. If that's when we kind of thought that was the end of his run as Loki, and I was like, okay, you know what, that's a great ending for him, phenomenal. And I have complained. I will be on the record say I've complained about RDJ coming back a little bit. I've complained about maybe Chris Evans coming back or whatever. I complained about they're getting the Russos coming back. Or Hail Mary. They're getting like desperate. Blah blah blah. I mean, even hypocritical when they announced that Tom Hiddleston was coming back as Loki. I was like, I'm okay with it. 'Cause
I I will never forget in real time having as they were doing the chair thing. We didn't talk about this at all.
no, we
So
didn't.
we really didn't. I actually loved the way that they revealed the cast so far for the movie. We know it's not everyone. They were trying to get ahead of it because I think there's going to be some outdoor shooting, and they had to get ahead of the people in the first block of the production.
Right.
And the big thing was the reveal that the Fox X-Men cast is coming back, which
Right.
which I love. They deserve a fitting finale. Not that I don't love Days of Future Past, but Marsden deserves a better run at Cyclops in
Yeah.
one film, maybe two,
Right.
than he got in the X-Men films. Like,
Right.
these characters deserve better than a last one-line cameo like Kelsey Grammer
Right.
in Days of Future Past also. So, love that they're coming back, especially Alan Cumming. I can't believe that he's coming back as Nightcrawler, and he
Yeah.
seems so thrilled, which is really heartening.
Yeah. I agree.
And good for Feige. Again, this is going back to the thing that we've talked about, that Feige's been around since the beginning. We have to remember, like, he was a smaller production assistant that led to producer to et cetera, since the beginning.
Mhm.
And he likes these cast members and he wants to see them succeed. So them doing that was a huge win. But we were all kind of talking. We have our fantasy football chat. We were privately texting as the chair reveal was happening. And the funniest thing was, I was texting Jacob London, and London was like, "There's no world Hiddleston's coming back. There's no way. Like, he's done. Like, he's clearly done." I was like, "There's no way he's going to be in the movie." I was like, "I bet you he's like the MacGuffin of the movie in some capacity, because I'm sure that the tree of time and stuff is going to play a huge part in the film."
Great.
And sure as shit, not 10 minutes later, they started playing the Loki theme as the camera moved. And I texted you, and I texted him, and then I texted you, and I was all, I hate to say I told you so, but I also told you so. And he goes, yeah, I own that. I was wrong, which I don't hear him say very often. So, it was a sweet success for me
There you
to hear that. But
go.
I will never be mad if they find ways to bring him back.
No,
And
he's stuck in.
here's hoping that he gets more to do in this one than he did in Avengers Infinity War.
Right, which we'll get to.
Yeah. Like, not that I don't love Infinity War, but
Right,
you killed him off in 10 minutes.
right. I mean, I kinda understand it to a
Well,
degree, but
sure.
I agree. And bringing it back to this film, I wanna say real quick before I say this is the first time in the MCU at this point where honestly the villain is better than the hero. Not only is he a great villain, the first great villain we've had, I think he's better performer and better draw than Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I think Chris Hemsworth as Thor develops and gets there over time of the MCU. But right here at this moment in time, Tom Hiddleston is the star of this movie for me.
I don't disagree at all. And I would also argue I think it's also just because the two characters are vastly different and one is far more interesting than the other.
Yeah.
And that's not like, again, it's not necessarily a dig, and I don't even think that's a problem with the movie because I do think Thor as a character is good. He's super fun, like he's super likable. Hemsworth is great. But Hiddleston's character arc is so much more interesting. His performance is so much more interesting that you can't help but be drawn to it. And that's why they were so smart to lean on that and make him the villain in the Avengers because they knew that they then had a villain that was already built.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that it was an actor that people liked. They knew that he could be charismatic and go toe to toe with all those guys, and it works because you had to have someone who could do that. And that's again another conversation for another time, obviously. But it all comes back to this movie,
Mm-hmm.
and this entire thing really just stands on the back of Hiddleston. As weird as that sounds.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like, I almost wanted to look at the end of the movie. I kind of wanted to watch it again because I'm trying to figure out exactly like how long he is in the film because it's not like he's in a lot of the scenes, but it's
I mean,
amazing
he's in it from beginning to end.
That's what it is. He always keeps coming back, and it's amazing. Like with as little, like not as it's not like a Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs situation, but it's similar in that like with a small amount of time, he really is like he carries the movie,
Right.
for the most part.
No, and 100%. And I think the other thing that really works in this movie's favor is that the way it does intercut, as we talked about, taking the story, we start the film and you're already in New Mexico, they hit Thor, and it's this whole thing, and then we're whisked away
right.
to Asgard. And it's actually a really great opening. You could cut the first 5 minutes and just jump into Anthony Hopkins doing the narration, but I actually like it better this way.
Oh, interesting. Because actually, that was one of my notes is that I honestly didn't like the open. I'm not that I didn't like it, but I thought it would have been better served to have opened up on Asgard, get us into that like that mode of operatic grandeur, and then you pan down to Natalie Portman looking up at the stars. I think that's a better way to do it. To be completely honest with you, I didn't mind it necessarily, but personally, I would have liked it better the other way.
No, but I'm also a sucker for taking a movie or like starting your movie mid-movie and us cutting back to getting there. But I also think it's good because it grounds the movie out the gate in that don't worry. Again, being aware of this movie is very earth set for a lot of it. For people who are like not really into mythical things, it allows you to be reminded up front, don't worry, we will get back to this.
Interesting. I completely disagree, but I understand what you're saying, and I can see why you say that. I completely disagree with it. I just love the idea of it not doing that. I love the idea of like let's bring you in, let's hit you over the head. This is
you and I agree with you, right? And I see what you're saying.
Right.
But I think that we have to remember we are not the target audience. You and I read the comics.
Yeah.
We are not the target audience.
Well, the target audience, we have to bring in the other audience, is what you're saying. Actually, I think.
Right?
Is like, and we are the target audience. It's the other people.
We are, but the general audience is the bigger grab. And there's a lot of people like fantasy is a real hard sell for a lot of people. Remember, the first Lord of the Rings and the first Harry Potter probably actually were helped a lot by a world where we had just gone through some shit and people wanted to escape into different worlds. That's not always the case. Fantasy stuff is such a hard sell usually. So for them to be able to like ground it a little bit, but then give us a good 20 minutes of just fantasy is the right move. Because it allows you to then be like, cool, we've now expanded the world. We now see where this is. And you're a little more accepting in some ways. Again, general audience, not you and I. And that's why I have to make the argument.
I understand. Yeah, I understand the argument. To me, I would argue that if like Natalie Portman's character was the focal point, like it was her movie, and that's the movie we're going with, we're seeing someone like entering the bigger world, that's the way to go that way. But I feel like when the movie is supposed to be Thor, it's about him coming down. So you have to establish him first and then coming down and seeing all the like almost that's almost like the fantasy part. And like we're watching it
Well,
from
it's
his world.
interesting because I actually think it's one of the how did our hero end up here sort of things.
I
And so
get
he is
that.
technically the focal point. Yes, it starts with the 3 scientists, but the focal point is that they hit Thor with the car, and
Right.
why is our hero out in the middle of the desert in New
Right.
Mexico? So, again, it's a your mileage may vary sort
Yeah.
of thing, and it was funny because I had that exact thought while I was watching it that you could easily take that out, but I think it's good for the audience also because you create a character that you are now going, was he banished? Did something happen? Like, you create a little air of mystery, which is also always, like, kind of fun,
Right.
because
No, I get
if you
that.
don't know the character, you don't necessarily know, like, how he ended up there,
Right.
and so there is something to be said about creating a little bit of mystery out of it.
I get that also. I think part of it is, and this is definitely a situational thing, but I have grown, I don't, I've grown tired of it, or I'm not as fond of that trope of beginning in the middle
That's
of a
fair.
movie as I used to be. I feel like it's best served if we're going to do that, that we are going to, the reason why we're doing it is that we're going to recontextualize what we see. It's almost
Sure.
like, I like the idea when like you see something and you're like, you see it some way, but when you see the backstory, you go, oh, that's why we saw it this way first. This doesn't seem to do that to me. This seems kind of like we're just going to hit the action and then go, this is how we got there.
Yeah.
I'm a little tired of that that
No,
trope
no, it's
myself.
fair. I don't I can't fault you for that. I do understand that. It's just one of those things, but I do love how much that once we also pan to Asgard and we see it for the first time, it's actually like low key one of the more beautiful set designs and
Mhm.
most interesting designs that of anything Marvel has done and continues to do.
I would argue
Um,
it's funny you mentioned Lord of the Rings because it really reminded me of Rivendell. Oh, very
yeah,
much so.
yeah, 100%. I and it's real grandiose. It looks very Jack Kirby like
Yeah.
with some like modern aesthetics, which I really, really dig. It really pops off. It looks really good. That whole section of the movie really makes me feel like I understand the reality of these worlds
Right.
and like where everything stands throughout. And that's what makes this whole thing work is that once you start that, like all the stuff with the frost giants is so great. You got, credit where credit's due. I think Comfior is so good as
Mm.
Lofi, the king of the frost giants.
Yes.
And dude, the design of the frost giants is so cool. The way that they're shot is so cool. Um, it really lands. I will say, I think that there's a little bit of darkness to the world that doesn't necessarily need to be there. And that was do you remember when this came out and it was in 3D?
Yes, I do. I
Because
do.
it was nearly impossible to watch
Right.
in the opening because it was you were wearing the dark 3D glasses and you really couldn't make out what was happening.
Right.
We've come a long way from that, but even just seeing it now, like it's God, it looks good. Like it's a little too dark still, but I really like it. But this whole world, this whole war, everything that happened, how Odin and them like this rift that it created, and like the kind of complex politics, as it were,
Yeah.
of the Frost Giants and Odin and all of that is great.
I
And
agree.
it makes a living, breathing world. Sorry, I'm really like really excited about
Yeah,
this
I
actually.
get it. I love the fact because I love the fact we get like throughout the entire film we get these hints that there are other realms and stuff like that.
Yes.
And like it's like, ooh, I want to visit all of these realms. This is great world building. This is great universe building. And I mean, we haven't even touched the surface really on Thor. We've had 4 Thor films. We still haven't touched the surface of everything we could do, to be completely honest with you. But I
I
do
think we
love.
may only have one more shot at it at this
I
point.
know. I agree. I agree. Unfortunately, although I would love to see something like this is the future expanded out to doing like a. I've always thought what a great story we could have, even if it's like an animated series or if it's like a Disney Plus thing. The gods, like of
Yeah.
Marvel Universe, you'd have like Warriors 3 in there. You could throw the Olympian gods in, the Asgardian gods in. You could throw all these different like the kind of things
Yeah.
and cross them over and stuff. It could be a very cool anthology type series to do. They call it Journey to Mystery, just like it used to be, like
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah.
of thing. It'd be a
Well,
wonderful.
and I love that there is a nod to that in this too. Like, and that was part of what the like being in New Mexico, because of their what is it? Their whole thing is the journey into mystery or whatever. And I love that that was their thought process when they were
Right.
doing it.
Yeah.
It's so good. I just love that because yeah, that would be great. Again, those are the things they should be doing.
100%. Absolutely.
Um, I'll say this too. One of the things that makes me really happy about this movie, though, is that once that stuff is all established, they never turn away from it. And
Right.
even once it's like grounded, as you would call it in New Mexico,
Mhm.
the fantasy elements never end. And I really appreciate that even once the destroyer shows up, they don't try to ground it. It is
Right.
legitimately that destroyer walking through the middle of the streets. They don't turn away, and then the Warriors 3 wear their clothes exactly as they're wearing it on Asgard. They don't, send them to a shop to change or anything like that,
Well, you know what you see happen often in these kind of things.
Right,
You see that, like, we're gonna disguise ourselves and stuff. No, they're just there to be them.
right. We got Xena, the warrior princess, and Jackie Chan walking down the street, which is one of my, random favorite one-off lines in a movie. Um, it just kills me every single time. But all the fantasy elements stay pretty heavily interactive throughout,
Right.
which is what really makes the movie stand out. And you see it even when they're going to break in for Thor to try to get the hammer.
Mhm.
And the way that the weather starts to change a little bit, and the way that you hear the thunder, you see the lightning, and it's like it's kind of reacting to the fact that he's there. It's
Right.
not that the weather just changed; it's that he's there,
Right.
and they
So
make that the point because he gives her the jacket, and he goes, "You're gonna need this," and she goes, "What? Why?" And then you hear the thunder, and the rain starts, and you're like, "Fuck yeah!"
yeah, they do a great job, and that's the Brana side of things. Like I said before, that's the build up to that
Yeah.
operatic grandness that's there. You need to have that in Thor. And I think actually the Dark World suffers from like a fake version of that. Like it feels like it's
Oh,
trying to do
100%.
that, but doesn't quite hit that realm.
Taylor's not a
Ragnarok.
very good film.
No, no. Ragnarok brings that back, despite the your miles may vary on the comedy aspect of it, but we'll get to there eventually.
Yes.
Um, and low key, I'll say at this point again, bring up low key. I know my pun intended. I'll spoil it right now that before we begin this MCU journey, where we're re-ranking them and all that kind of stuff, Ragnarok is probably my favorite MCU film, but we'll get there.
Look, just because it looks like the side of the van you drove in high school,
maybe a little bit.
maybe a little bit. Wasn't Jason Statham originally supposed to be in that movie too? If
I
I'm
want to say he
remembering correctly,
was.
I think he was
Yeah.
supposed to be Carl Urban's character.
I think that is actually true. I'm gonna look it up. I think we talked
I
about
think
it.
that's
Maybe.
accurate, or at least they wanted him at one point. And I just think about what it would have been like if that had just been Jason Statham.
I mean, and that's no slight on Carl Urban, who would have been
No,
great.
because Carl Urban's fucking amazing in that movie.
Absolutely. I don't see it. Looks like it was maybe a fan casting potentially,
Oh,
but I
maybe
don't
that's
know.
what it was. In my head, I definitely
Oh
could
no,
see
there
it.
you go. Kevin Feige reveals that Jason Statham is almost cast in a Marvel movie. Doesn't say which one though, so that must be
That's
it. Though.
probably what it was. And then I know that there was talk about him being potentially Bullseye in season 3 of Daredevil initially, before they went the direction they went, and I'm glad they went
Right.
the way that they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I'll leave it at that.
Um,
So
so anyway, there's one thing I do want to bring up in all this.
okay.
We've talked about it, how great the cast is,
Okay.
and here's a character that initially I didn't love, but this character has grown so much on me over the years, and that is Kat
I
Dennings
was gonna
as
say.
Darcy.
I was gonna say that. I
I
was gonna
know.
bring her up. I was gonna
I
bring her up. I was gonna say that this is a character who is very polarizing.
yes.
Some people love her, some people hate her.
I've really grown to like Darcy, and
I
she's really fun in this.
I never not liked her. I get like when people talk about it, like she can be annoying if you don't. I guess I can understand that, but I always laughed. I always chuckled. I thought she was kind of like she was the fish out of water part that we needed. Like she was like
Yeah.
almost the audience because Natalie Portman was more of the heady scientist type and everything else. She was the one that had the love interest, whereas Kat Dennings was just kind of like us watching like going, wow, fucking Thor.
She's the perfect version of putting someone like us right in the middle of everything and being like, guys, this is just ridiculous at this point.
I almost wonder if we saw too much of ourselves in her, and that's why people didn't like it in a way.
Maybe, honestly, but
Am I that annoying?
it really works for me
It does too.
in this film, and I like that they've done more with her as time has gone on. Um, but she really is like the audience surrogate character. And one of my favorite random one-off lines is she keeps talking about the iPod, and she's really frustrated after Shield takes all of their stuff, and she keeps bringing up the iPod. And then Eric Selvig is like, "Well, okay, I'm just gonna email one of my friends. He's dealt with these people before. Like, maybe they can help us." And she just looks at him and she goes, "They took your laptop too." And just the way she says it, and like the camera, and like Selvig's face just looks so like sad and
Distraught.
disappointed,
Yeah.
and you're just like, it's just really funny, and it's silly, but it works, you know?
It's so funny. I love that.
Yeah, like it's just a little thing, man, but it makes me laugh.
And I'll tell you what, I think this might be the most polarizing thing I'm gonna say in a way. I love that she called it Mew Mew.
Mew Mew, yeah, it makes me laugh. Mew Mew,
Mew
what's Mew Mew? All the fish out of water stuff actually really works in this movie. When they're at the coffee shop and he throws the glass down and she's like, "What are you doing? Like, you just ask. You if you Well, I did. I just did. I meant no disrespect." Like, all of that's great. And then Darcy taking the picture of, yeah, this is going on the Instagram, and he smile, and Thor just has this big ass goofy smile because he's eating pancakes. You're like, I can't even be mad, man. Like, it's just fun. And that's the thing. This movie's really fun.
Yeah, it is.
It's so watchable.
I guess I can understand people having problems with the dichotomy of having like the epic fantasy battles and yet this other fun side of things. But I do think if you give it a chance and let it go with the flow with it, it connects well enough that it works. It doesn't ever, I don't think it ever really gets completely jarring because it also kind of just translates slowly into everything. It's not just like
Yeah.
bam, bam. It kind of gives you the path in, gives you the path back. And that's what makes it work.
Yeah, and I think that the character relationships are all like very well built and very dynamic
Yeah.
throughout. And I think that plays a huge part because I believe the relationship between Thor and Loki. When Loki finds out that he's actually, a frost giant and he was actually kidnapped by Odin and was basically going to be used as a pawn in some
Hmm.
capacity, like
Hmm.
your heart shatters a little bit. And of course, he's trying to get out of his brother's shadow. And then you find that out.
Yeah, it's even worse. Makes it even worse. Like, he was just
Yeah.
already in his shadow, and now you're like, "Oh, now I understand why Daddy doesn't love me because I'm not his.
Yeah.
I'm his enemy." In a way, it's like the worst part of the world. Uh, I will
God,
say one
it's
negative
so
about this
good.
film. I do have some. We're basically going all over how much we love this film. I do have some potential misgivings, not to
Sir.
include the opening. One of the things I think that sucks for me is that it's a complete waste of Rene Russo. She
Well,
is
yeah,
so
there's
wasted in this
that.
role. Like,
I
you
forget
have
she's
Rene
in
Russo.
this,
That's the problem. You have Rene
honestly.
Russo, and you're just gonna let her do that, which anybody could have done that. Like, that's like a complete waste of time for me. I kept waiting for her to do more. Her to have this like big
It's
important scene, and she never really does. You're like, oh, well,
No,
okay.
it's so funny, and she never I think in the second movie, she gets a little bit more to do, but
Yeah.
it is one of those weird things where you're like, "That is clearly Rene Russo in a movie not having a lot to do."
Like Rene
And
Russo's
it's
her best scene is in like Endgame. I think is probably her best scene. Like,
Yes,
it's not
correct.
even in the Thor franchise. Like, what are we doing with it? I don't know.
It's a very interesting choice, having her there, and again, that feels more like them just trying to fill in an
Right.
actress you recognize to
Right.
be in this world as Odin's wife,
Right.
and that's great, but also give her a little more to do. She's got a couple of decent lines of dialogue, and she's very good when she's playing off Tom Hiddleston, but again, it's there's not a lot happening there.
I always wonder if there was more initially with her at some point, because it feels like you casted her, you gave her something, and maybe she got cut for some reason, and that's why it feels like that's the case. Otherwise, if this was her story, this was the script we had, why do you offer that to Rene Russo, and why does she accept it?
Yeah,
I guess you can say like Anthony Hopkins, Marlon Brando, they're all smaller roles per se, but Anthony Hopkins has a hefty part at least, even in his like small amount of screen time. It's a hefty
yeah.
part. Right, just sitting there as Anthony Hopkins' wife for the most part, Tom Hiddleston's mom. It just seems very incongruous with like what you would do.
Yeah, and I think that this is another one of those, we're still in the Marvel's a little afraid of going outside of the runtime thing still
Hmm.
too,
Yeah.
because this movie is under 2 hours. So there's a world where I could see some of her stuff getting cut out because most of the deleted scenes, if you look on Disney Plus or on your like Blu-rays, a lot of them are of their time on Asgard.
Right.
So there is a chance that a lot of the stuff that was even like further in staying in that realm was cut out for time and pacing, and that could include more of the stuff involving her.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit of a bummer. It's not a make or break thing, obviously, but it is like a little distracting in some capacity because you're like, oh, that is Rene Russo. Yeah. Why am
Right.
I overthinking that that's Rene Russo? Because she has nothing to do.
Right. Absolutely. My other, I guess, misgiving in a way is like a lot of the Marvel movies, the third act part, the final battle sequences. Um, I'm talking pre Back to Asgard are not the greatest. They kind of seem a little typical. The destroyer part is theirs. Got moments, but I feel like I've been there, done that. I like it when they return to Asgard after. I think that's the part that works for me. There's a stretch of moments in there where there's some fun in it, but it seems like it's still kind of like a all right, this is our battle. Our final battle is destroyer in the small town. Stakes seem a little low.
Uh, I think once you realize that it's not the final battle, it's fine because it has its place into pushing us into the 3rd act.
Right, right. Okay. I guess that works.
It works as the moment that Thor is gonna sacrifice himself to save the people in the
Yeah.
town.
Right.
And
It does, yeah,
so
it gives him his moment of getting that hammer
yeah,
back.
and part of the reason that I like it, weirdly enough, is because since it's an old west town, it's a standoff in the middle of the streets of
Uh,
an old western town. Like, it is very much trying to play off of the motifs of, like, the old westerns down to the hero potentially having a conversation with the duelist on the other side,
right,
and then this one is, though, him pleading with his brother, like, "Look, killing them is not gonna do anything for you," like, and him finally being like, "You if you've got problems with me, I understand and I'm sorry, but,
right,
like, these people should not get hurt because of that."
right.
And so that stuff is really good and it really works. It does feel a little samey, and they're aware of it though, because they even have the joke. Is this one of Stark's? I don't know. Guy doesn't tell me anything. So they're very aware. It's another big iron
Yeah.
suit type thing. Like they very much know that.
I guess the part of it for me is that also not only is it just another suit thing, but and this actually goes along with another one of my minor misgivings and something I've grown to accept is that the destroyer is much more important in the comics in a way, and this
Oh
is
yeah.
like it kind of feels like a waste of a character, almost a character assassination to make him just like basically Loki's thug in a way. And I will say there's some differences. I mean, Jane Foster's a lot different in the comics, and it's kind of like a little. It took me a little bit to get used to that and everything else. I know that I like the nod to Don Blake,
Yeah.
with the
The
thing,
fact that Donald Blake was her ex, but like,
right?
yeah,
It's just some misgivings, and I get that at this point the MCU is its own thing and it's developing its own thing. It's much like how Civil War is far different than the comic book version because of how things have expanded. I didn't quite get that at the beginning. I kind of want a little bit more samey,
sure.
so I am a little bit. I've grown to accept it, but the destroyer thing still kind of bugs me a little bit. Like you could have had another thug and use the destroyer later on somewhere else potentially.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong, but I ultimately like that's one of those things. I'm always happy if it's done the right way, and I
Right.
don't necessarily like the destroyer just being like Loki's henchman thug
Right.
works for me
Okay. All right. That's
because
fair.
I think that it's a good reminder of how powerful they are. Number one, and I think it's just good also in the, obviously there's still a little bit of Selvig not really believing that he's Thor and them
Mm,
being like surprised by the idea that this world could exist. And so having this thing walk into the middle of the town the way that it does, it really is it cheesy? Yeah, sure, but at least it works within the confines of what we're doing. And yeah, the destroyer could have been a better character, but like ultimately that just kind of is what it is, right?
hmm Right. Absolutely.
And yeah, like again, no shade. I totally understand it. I just kind of look at it as it's the bigger piece that pushes us into the next part. And it's also the thing that actively pushes Thor to like be better because if he's going to die saving them and at least he's dying at the hands of something Asgardian, so there's that too. And I've always kind of appreciated that. So like, because Sif wants to go out with her noble death, but it was like, no, Thor's gonna just walk out
Right.
and do the same thing. Like him telling her, no, you live to tell this story another day, and then him walking out there without it, mostly without his powers,
Right.
is
Yeah.
really good.
That actually threw me for a loop too. I like it's kind of like actually the same thing happened to me in the comic books at one point. My favorite, I've mentioned this before on the channel. My favorite Marvel Comics hero was Hercules,
Right.
and at one point in the comic book, he got stripped of his immortality by Zeus for some reason, and then he like lost like half his powers, and like but they were very like vague on what that meant, like because basically like, Zeus took his immortality away, and all of a sudden he was like half strength, and like they never really made it clear what happened. All of a sudden, randomly later on, he was back to full strength. It was never really figured. Like
But
I was
that's
like,
pretty comic-y.
right, absolutely. But like, so when this happened to Thor, and like he takes Thor's hammer away and sends him down, I was like, wait, but he's a god. Like, so that made him less. Like, because I also like the drug, like the needle punches his skin and stuff, and he gets taken out by a taser. I'm like, wait, a taser took out Thor? And didn't they ring to be that like they took away some of his powers as well in a way? Like, it's kind of like again, it's so vague to me as far as like,
Well,
are you did he take
the
away
movie makes it the
hammer or
point,
is
and
it
I gotta
really
give them credit because I hear what you're saying, but they very much tell us up front when he
mm,
strips him of his when he takes the hammer away. The thing that Odin says is the person who wields this hammer
mhm,
will have the power of
power of
Thor.
Thor?
So it's the hammer that gives them the power.
Right, but then like the thing is like so I guess my question is what does that mean? Because he still is able to like tear ass in the shield base. Like he tears through
Well,
all these
he's
agents and
still
stuff.
because he's still big, he's still strong, but he's
Right.
not superhuman.
So again, I guess that's my point is like, where is his levels now? And it's not like again the end of the world. I get over it and everything else, but I was a little
Yeah.
like I'm trying to follow going because I remember going like, oh, wait, a taser took him out. Okay, all right, that's where we are. And then drug.
Well,
Oh,
and he
okay, okay,
even like when he goes, he looks at the one guard and he goes, "You're big, fought
right,
bigger," and then the dude fucking hits him, and you see like he's still surprised. Like that
right,
dude throws down with him.
yeah,
So it's even for him that he's still not used to. He thinks he can be more powered than he is. Like, yeah, he can tear through a lot of those dudes because
right,
he is physically still a big guy,
right,
but he's also
absolutely.
not like the world's strongest man or anything.
100%, 100%. It just again, and again, I get over it, nitpicky stuff. I'm just
Oh,
like,
I get
it
it.
just it gave me trauma from my childhood when I was trying to figure out how strong Hercules was at that
No,
point.
that's fair. That's fair. The shield break-in is a standout MCU thing for me though, because it allows Hemsworth to be really good
Yeah,
at being Thor
right.
and the arrogant side of him, which I really like. But it also gives us Hawkeye for the first time,
And let's
and
Hawkeye
that
be
stuff is
Hawkeye.
really good.
Yeah. Like, he really gets that first moment of Hawkeye when he takes the arrow, like, he's standing in the face of this, like, godlike being, like, kicking ass, and he's like, "I got it. You want me to take him down? Alright." Let's like
My favorite is the Coulson. You better make a choice. I'm starting to root for this guy. Like
so good.
again, it's funny because we talk a lot about how it's very clear when Marvel does reshoots on things nowadays.
Yeah.
It's very clear that even the stuff with Renner is added after the fact. He interacts with literally no one other
No
than
one.
like talking to Coulson, but
Right,
he's
right,
never on screen with anyone.
right.
So like it's all very clearly added after the fact, but I don't care because it really works within the film.
I gotta say, I don't notice it, honestly, until I think about it afterwards.
Right.
Because, like, I'm into the movie enough where I'm like, "Okay, cool. Get it." And then, like,
Right.
after, like, "Oh, yeah, he didn't. Did he really know that?" So, yeah, when you're told it, you can't unsee it when you know it, but during the actual film, I never would have said anything about it until later on.
No. And I tend to find I'm that way with most of those movies, to be
Yeah,
honest. Like, it generally doesn't bother me too much.
right,
Every once in a while, there's, like, the obvious ones, and you're like, "Come on, man." But, like,
right.
that's also anything, because sometimes shooting movies is hard, and you just can't get people in the same room on the same day. It
Right.
happens.
Absolutely. Especially the more and more we go on, and the bigger and bigger casts get with bigger and bigger stars, and
Yeah, because I wanna say, like, Cumberbatch's stuff in the Avengers movies, like, was largely done on his own,
mhm,
and he was
mhm.
put into the movie after the fact,
Yep.
mostly,
I
which
remember
is
how
wild.
I remember how big of a deal they made of Endgame of getting all like as many people as they did get back there for Tony's funeral and everything else for a little bit.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's what happens. It's hard to get everybody together at the same time.
yeah.
But
I mean, it's just that's reality,
yeah.
like, it's very difficult to do that stuff. Um, I think that this movie is also, we've talked about it a lot, it's really funny, and
Mhm.
it's again, I think it's overblown that Marvel has always had, like, now Marvel's quippy and funny, people have always tried to blame that on the Avengers, but it's like, no, no,
Mhm.
it existed since the very first Iron Man, and this movie continues that same trend. Like, I chuckle a lot while I watch it. I think it's really fun. This movie's light.
Yeah.
That's what I really like. It's a really light watch in, like, a really good way.
Which is funny considering how like epic the setting is, like, with the
Yeah.
gods and everything else, but it is kind of a fun movie. It is a tough line to kinda straddle. It very
Yeah.
much so is, and I think it does fail for some people, and that's why some people this isn't one of the favorite Marvel films of people. It's not ever mentioned in the tops. It's always mentioned in honestly, more mentioned towards the bottom than others are. But granted, Marvel has a big spectrum and run of great
Yeah.
fun films.
30 plus movies at this point.
Right, so I get that, but I think it definitely works for us, the line straddle works for us where it's got that fun aspect enough, but it still stays epic enough to maintain the truth of the story, of the characters rather, I should say, and it works overall.
No, 100%. I think that it overall really does at least work in some capacity. Your mileage may vary on how some of the stuff plays out, but I think that the movie stays true to itself.
Agreed.
The When you have a character like Eric Selvig, who is kind of very much like, these are fantasy stories that I grew up reading, and seeing him awaken to it. All
Right.
these little moments where, like, Jane sees Thor becoming Thor, and it cuts to, oh my god, great little things. I think that having three very likable characters that are earthbound and grounded
Mhm.
really makes it more enjoyable for me.
Absolutely, I get that entirely, the
Because
same
if
thing.
they weren't likable, the stuff on Earth wouldn't work.
Right, and that's the thing is we had to keep in mind that Marvel had this idea. Not only we said they were scared to make a full-on Thor movie, which I get to a degree also, but this is not just a Thor movie. At this
No.
point, we know we are moving Thor into the Avengers. This is
Right.
the first. I think this is the first time we actually have at the end Thor will return in the Avengers, like as
Mhm.
like the bumper.
Yeah, another first.
So I think that like it's solidified now that the Avengers are happening. So in the mind, they got to go. We have this grandiose thing, but we got to put Thor into this earthbound superhero team. And we can't waste time in the Avengers really doing that.
Yeah.
So this serves as that way to get Thor down here so then he can go into here, so to
Well,
speak.
it was the thing that Marvel always realized, is that it was better to build to the Avengers than just to do the Avengers, and it was the thing that kneecapped DC at WB,
Yeah,
because WB wanted to rush to get to Justice League because they saw that it was the Avengers movies were doing so well,
right.
and in doing that, they kneecapped their film, because you end up having to create introductions for all your characters, and
Absolutely.
that's a problem, you
100%.
know? Especially if it's characters that people don't necessarily know.
Right, and that's the thing too, is like a lot of these superhero teams are made up of like a big 2 or 3, but then there's like a lot of secondary characters that you're gonna have to flesh out a little bit, and they're not gonna know and be like, "Who's that? I don't know who that is." I mean, DC had Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Those are the big 3.
Yeah.
People know them, but after that, it's a little sketchy at that point.
Yeah, 100%.
The Avengers are actually even worse when you think about it. You think about the very first Avengers team, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Iron
And
Man,
Iron
the
Man in
Hulk.
that big ass, like, tin suit.
Right, and the Iron Man at before Iron Man 1, if you try to do the Avengers first,
Oh my god.
nobody knows who Iron Man is, honestly. I
No.
mean, comic book fans do, but the general audience is like, "What?"
You mean that song by Black Sabbath?
Right, exactly, that's what it is. They would know Hulk They would know
Yeah.
who Hulk is. They might have a glancing idea of a Captain America, like who, like,
And
oh,
Thor, obviously, you could go either direction because Thor is kind of like a, Norse god.
he's a Norse god, but you don't see him as a superhero, so you don't know the Marvel version of
No.
Thor really in a way to degree. So, I mean, that's so different. I mean, DC actually, I think that might have been why DC was arrogant enough. Like, well, you know what? They have that, but we have Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. We all know them. Everybody already knows them for the most part. So that made it like, but it was still an arrogant
Yeah.
decision that poorly kept them up for
Oh, yeah,
sure.
100%. Also, can we talk about I love that every time that Thor talks to Coulson, he calls him son of Cole. I think that is one of the funniest bits that stays into the Avengers is calling
Uh,
him son of
Son of
Cole.
Cole. And let's talk about Coulson in general. Again,
Oh my god, dude.
spectacular role.
I just I love Clark
Spectacular.
Gregg.
Clark Gregg knows his assignment. He's not in it very much, but when he is, he delivers every time. He is the guy who's supposed to act completely not impressed with the most impressive things you could possibly imagine, except for Captain America, which we get to.
Yes.
That's the best part about that little running joke, which we'll get to the Avengers, is that that's the one thing he actually is like
A
almost
super
out of
fan of.
whack with. That's
Yeah.
right. Like one of my favorite lines in this entire movie is when Coulson comes back in just to Thor and goes, I don't think you've been completely honest with me.
Know this, son of Cole. You have and Thor very quickly just being like, I will fight by your side, but you have to let me do this thing, and then just flies off, and he's like, but we have to debrief you. I
Oh,
I
that's so funny.
I love that. I think that's so good. And again, it also shows like it's so funny to me. So Shield has been around for a long time, but boy, they also look so fucking incompetent.
Yeah. I mean, that's the typical thing. It's
That
like
no, I know, but it makes me laugh. They just
I
feel so
agree.
fucking incompetent.
They're almost like stormtroopers. Like they're supposed to be the
Yeah.
badass, death elite troopers, like the Empire. They're supposed to be the badass, and but like at the same time, they're basically just fodder for our heroes or whoever needs
Yeah.
to beat them at the time. Unfortunately.
You when he has Thor after the break-in and he's like, "You made my men look like a bunch of middle-aged mall cop or minimum wage mall cops." That's hurtful. The way he delivers the line is just so good, and it's funny because that was the way the original trailer opened.
Yep.
Was that shot of him saying that to Thor because they knew very quickly if that they had Clark Gregg front and center of that trailer, you'd go, "Oh, this is in the same universe as the rest of those things." Iron Man 2 had already pointed we were headed there, obviously,
Right.
but like it's a nice, a nice little continuation of that, and it gives you that that good feeling.
I do wonder if Feige like had an idea like how that was going to go with Clark Gregg when they cast him in like Iron Man 1. Was that the idea that he was going to do this? Or was it just like that, like he got so well received that they went, let's go back to him and use
I
him
think it
again?
was more that. I think it
Probably.
became how do we lean in on it and keep moving with it,
I
and
still think losing him from the main MCU films was one of the biggest like missteps of the earlier eras. I feel like you could have done a lot more with him still. I know he got Agents
I
of Shield out of it. I get that, but
no, but I also I don't disagree with you, and I mean I have a lot of problems with the Avengers, and I do understand what they're. Here's the thing: we'll get to it. I like the Avengers a lot. I think that it, like a lot of the Phase One stuff, unfortunately suffers from look how far we've come.
right.
In hindsight, and I do think that that becomes one of those. I get why you did it. I get why that's why the Avengers get together. Everyone like Coulson, but it does kind of make it suffer a little bit because I
Yeah.
miss him in the MCU proper.
There's something about the character and like talk about connectivity. His connectivity over like him always being around is just like that kind of he's that loyal friend. He's that friend you
Yeah,
see. You're like, oh, it's
he
that
was the family dog.
guy. Right. Exactly. It's a great point.
They
It's
killed the
what I
family
said.
dog.
Kill the family dog. Bad move. But I guess I understand you're trying to make it like you're trying to
They're
raise
trying to create the
stakes.
stakes.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
trying to create the stakes, and it's the thing is I got real frustrated, and I kind of went off in our fantasy chat about it, but like
You
I'm
did.
really tired of stakes being people must die.
Yeah.
I think it's a general lack of imagination
It's a cop
that
out.
we think that death is the only stake in things like this. Because people were talking about Thunderbolts and talking about how, well, if no one dies, there's no stakes to the movie. And it's like, none of these characters have to die for there to be stakes.
Right.
That's not
Absolutely.
how this works.
No. Agreed.
And I really don't love that as a concept. And so it really frustrates me. And it's so funny because then you look at Picard season 3. And Picard season 3 is so good because not only is it basically just the lost season of Next Gen, and it's trying to bring that franchise to a better close than it ends up going out of because of Nemesis.
Mhm.
But the stakes are never that they're going to die. They're
Right.
not going to kill off the next gen characters at this
Right.
point.
Right.
And it doesn't need them. It has other ways to build up tension and make you believe that this stuff is going to like matter without the looming threat of death.
I mean, I think it's okay to threaten death, like, because like especially
You
for Card
just
Season 3, for example, you could have like the idea that this is like the final season of like this is probably the end of the next gen cast. They could go,
they
so the
could.
stakes are there. But like to
Yeah.
use the stakes makes it feel a little like cheaper and a cutout unless you have a specific reason why you're doing it.
Right.
And then
Like
now those are few and far between.
I get why you do it in Endgame. I get
Yes,
the point
100%,
of that. But
100%.
it just also has to come at a time, and I think that the thing that something like Picard understands is it's a cop out to take all these characters away from each other once they've reunited, and we don't want to kneecap something like that, and so it becomes find a way to create a bigger threat, but they all work together to survive. That's more interesting, and
Agreed.
I just like that better because then you get to see them ending playing cards together.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best part about it. Yeah, that fun, because at the end of the day, uh, this is entertainment. This is escapism for us. We
Yeah,
fall in love with these characters. Why do we have to have them die? Like, why do we like
right.
the idea that they're fictional characters? Just means you can like. It's like what I don't. I hate bring up a franchise that maybe shouldn't be brought. What Hagrid? When Ruby is Hagrid,
Yeah.
Robbie Coltrane during the Harry Potter reunion special. He mentioned something like, Hogwarts will always be open to you guys to always come back and revisit us because that's what fictional characters are. You want to revisit these characters. You want to be able to just go hang out. You want to have the happily ever after. You don't have to see them die because we have to
That
see them
was
in that
the
real life.
right, and so that was one of the weird complaints I think that was lobbied or that was lobbed a lot at Dial of Destiny,
Yeah,
honestly, as weird as it
100%.
sounds, was the people who were really upset that Indy didn't stay in the past or die at the end, and I was like, "No, like, that defeats the purpose." Like,
Right.
the idea is that he has more to live for. The stakes are that if he stays behind, everyone else is gonna be lost without him. Like, that
Right.
the stakes are not leave him behind to die, it's
Right.
get back and fix the things that are broke. Like,
Absolutely.
mm,
And
anyway,
by the way, 1:32. It was an
I
hour and
know.
32 minutes before Dial of Destiny was brought up. That was your. I think that might be a record for you. So
At this point,
congratulations.
probably.
Congratulations.
I'm really happy for everyone at home who is still sober because I didn't say anything about it.
I actually, in the back of my mind, about an hour 20, I was like, "Are we gonna get a whole episode? Are we gonna
Oh,
do it?"
God, no,
Oh
God,
God,
no.
no.
God, no. Where's the fun in that, in reminding people? At this point, it's Stockholm syndrome for everyone who watches, and they're like, "Oh God, here it is. He's gonna make me like this movie, isn't he?" And it's like, here's the thing: you guys don't understand.
Yes. Yes, he will.
Yes, eh, you also have it wrong. You're stuck in here with me.
Nice. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's so good, man. I just so this all being said, this is a good movie, man. It's
Yeah.
not like top tier Marvel. It's not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a really good time. It's really fun. It's a really strong, like out the gate first step for this character. Um, I think everyone's really likable. I think the action really works.
Mhm.
Idris Elba is actually really good as Heimdall. We really haven't talked about that
At all. It's actually gonna make it
at
on my
all.
one of my catch-up notes is gonna be we haven't mentioned Idris at all, but he was a wonderful decision to make.
Yeah, and I
Especially
gotta say, like, all things being equal, I really like the third act. Again, you can take or leave the stuff with the destroyer, but once you get back to Asgard,
really
the
fun.
fight with Loki and Thor it's not like grand and epic, but it's done in a way that it feels smaller and more intimate while being on a grand stage that is the Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when
Visually,
yeah, it's
stunning.
visually powerful, and when you realize that Thor has to make the decision that he has to destroy the Rainbow Bridge so that Loki can't cause more damage, and it's gonna stop him from seeing Jane, it's actually a pretty powerful moment because it just shows how far he's come from the beginning of the movie that he would sacrifice love.
There's some stakes right there. There's some
Yeah,
stakes for you. Didn't need death at this point, right?
no, it's about that, and then for, how is she doing? Well, she looks up at the stars for you.
Right.
And you're
Right.
like, "Damn, dude, like, that's powerful, that's the good stuff." And I like that the basis of that is that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting though, we mentioned that the stakes and talking about stakes and death. How did you feel about Loki's uh leap away at the end there?
I like that moment
Okay.
because he's already told us up front that there's more ways to survive and get out of Asgard than anyone will know.
Right.
And so I've always liked that he does it on purpose because he's also hoping to make Thor live with the pain of killing him
Right. Yeah.
because,
Okay.
that's a very Loki type of thing.
I know I will say that one of the criticisms of the character over the course of the MCU is he has died quite a few times and come back. To the point where like Endgame when like sorry, Infinity War when that happened, we were like, is this the final one? This is the final one. And he still kind of came back in a
Yeah.
roundabout way. So when I saw that, I cringed a little bit, kind of like, I see where it begins. I'm like, okay, so this is the first time he's going to come back or whatever. But I will say it's kind of mitigated by the fact that it's not like it was a long time because he's in the post credits. Scene. So it's like, oh, okay, so he's not actually God. Okay, that makes
Well,
sense.
and as we knew, like it had already been. I think at that point we knew he was also the villain in
In
the
Avengers,
Avengers.
we might have
So
known that
like
already. I can't
it
remember.
all kind of made sense, obviously, that was the route that they were going. So I always liked within the confines of the film, at least, though, this idea that he kind of lets go on purpose to make Thor live with the pain of this is on you. Like it seems like him trying to basically control the
Right.
narrative and control, it gives him a leg up on Thor, which is so why when he shows up again, it's like a big deal.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I've always liked it on in that capacity because it feels like a very God of Mischief type of move.
I got. It. I kind of. I don't. I
No, I
almost would have preferred something a little different. Like I would have preferred like them capturing him, bringing him in somehow, and then like he leaves the prison. Like we leave him at the end of the prison, he gets out. Some I don't. I don't. I mean, it's fine. Again, it's nitpicky for me and all, but I do
sure.
like the idea that he can. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of like I might have chosen a different way to do it, but
Eh, you know what? I get it, but I think it works within the confines of the
okay.
film enough, and the bigger, like, play of Loki is always about trying to control everything like, control the odds and control
Right,
everything around him, so,
right,
like, that works for me.
right. Okay. Let's see. You got anything we're gonna wrap? That's pretty much we've done them mostly. I got a few notes there we can catch up on. Ones that we haven't mentioned yet. For me, I will say first off, the bleached eyebrows and beard is a choice. Uh, a little
Yeah.
distracting nowadays, like comparatively. Like, oh, that's what I get why you did it, kind of, but maybe you shouldn't, in hindsight, maybe bother to do that.
Probably, but, again, hindsight and all of that.
I couldn't not see. I'm kind of like, what is wrong? Like, oh, that's what that is. Okay, fair, got it. Um, Great Anthony Hopkins line delivery I want to mention. Like I mentioned before, he's not that he's phoning it in, but he's not necessarily. It's it is what it is. But he has one really great line when when he delivers to Thor. But you're not king.
Yeah.
Like out of
Oh my
nowhere,
god.
it's right there. That was worth the price of having him in the cast. Right there, so good.
It it again, him and Loki in the, "Is it? Is it?" Like, oh god, he's every time again, there's a reason that the movie works as well as it does, and it's these reasons
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I mentioned in my notes. I did mention it before. We mentioned the dude bro Thor thing at the beginning. I kind of forgot. It's been a while since I watched the film. How dude bro he was, considering how like surfer dude bro he gets later on, I guess you should
Yes.
say. Like, it's almost like I was like, "Oh, this is interesting because I don't see Thor that way because that's not how Thor is in the comics anymore, but he was in the beginning, and it was the right call to make, and it's the way he had to do it to tell the story because 'cause he's gotta have that arrogance to learn to be humble later on. That's what works to become a true hero. But it was jarring to me at first, I gotta admit, seeing how bad he was, how arrogant he was.
Yeah.
But it's not a knock because I think it actually does work very well overall. Yeah. So
No, it does. It's so funny because I'm with you. You kind of forget what an arrogant asshole he is, and that's
yeah,
actually what I love is that that's another line from Hopkins is the "You're a vain, arrogant, cruel boy,
cruel
and
guy.
you
Yeah.
are not worthy of of the power of the hammer." And just the way he delivers it, because he shuts him down, and then Thor shoots back and goes, "Well, you're an old man and a fool."
Right.
Oh,
Oh,
dude.
good moment there. And Chris does actually, for as much as I would give Chris a little flack for being like, obviously Hopkins and Hiddleston are up here, and he's a
Oh,
little
sure.
lesser, but he does stand his ground there, and it works very well overall. So I gotta give him credit for that. I mean, and that's
Well,
not a knock against Hemsworth. He just, I mean, to say you're not in the caliber of Anthony Hopkins, that's not exactly a knock. A lot of
no,
people
and
aren't.
again, I would say that he is surrounded ultimately by the actors that he can more easily go toe to toe with, because he was
Right.
still not like a dig at him, but he was still finding his footing as Thor. So it was better to have
Easily,
him
yes.
surrounded by other actors that allowed him to find that footing.
Right. Natalie Portman's a great actress as well, but the role she was playing allowed him to play that way. She didn't have to have any really, moments where she had to go toe to toe with him. Kat Dennings got to sit there and be, powerful. Stellan
Yeah,
Skarsgård, phenomenal actor, by the way. We know
and
this, but he
yes,
also doesn't have to have that like moment where he has to go toe to toe with him. In this, it's kind of more of a soft landing for Chris here.
they do have arguably one of the most heartfelt scenes though, which
Yes.
is once he. I love when Selvig goes to get him out of the camp, and
Yep.
he's having the conversation about everything that happened, and well, that doesn't explain how he went through my guards. Steroids.
Steroids. Steroids.
He, he was upset. He's a little bit of a gym freak
Right.
or fitness freak or whatever he calls it. And it just makes me laugh. And but then they get to the bar, and like the scene with him in the bar is really good. And then right afterwards, he's so drunk and he goes, still don't think you're the god of thunder, but you should be."
Their drunken chemistry, camaraderie, they're so good.
Yeah.
Stellan Skarsgård's such an underrated actor. I can't wait to see him in Andor again, coming up soon.
Yeah, dude,
Season two.
he's one of the best actors. That whole family is real talented.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So,
You could pretty much put a Skarsgård in any movie, and I'm probably gonna be happy about it.
yeah, and such different roles they play too. It's just different kind of things they've done over the course of
Yeah.
their career. I mean, Selvig, Luther Skarsgård, then you have like Alexander playing like the vampire in True Blood and doing Godzilla and doing so many other things that way. And of course, Bill
Yeah.
Skarsgård, who always is in every kind of makeup or mask possible to be a creepy son of a bitch in a way.
No, and we
Um,
got a whole TV show on its way now with him,
yeah,
because he's doing
so, yeah,
Pennywise again in the Dairy prequel.
which I'm excited about. I'm actually very excited about. So, yeah. All right. Anything else that you wanted to touch base on?
No, I gotta say, I think that, we kinda said it, but I do like all the little nods to the overall MCU. There's a great line Skarsgård says about SHIELD, making the leading researcher on
Right.
gamma
Yep.
radiation, disappear, and you're
Yep.
like, "Oh, that what a nice nod." There's a lot of good little nods to the overall MCU that is still building out. Love all that. Great post-credit scene. It's
Yep.
really setting up the Avengers, and Loki seeing the unlimited power of the Tesseract. Well, I
Yes.
guess that's worth a look. Um, this is a good movie, man. It's not a as far as origin stories go, it's pretty by the numbers, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's got
Right.
a great cast. It's fun. I laugh a lot while I watch it. It's got some great action. The Shakespearean kind of undertones to it all really helps sell it, because Brana really treats it with respect and like reverence. He doesn't try to downplay that. And I think that having him do it was the right move, because I think it does give the movie that extra bit of gravitas that like could have been missing if it wasn't him.
No, agreed. Absolutely
I
agreed.
think it's the thing that the second movie suffers from the most.
Mm.
And that's why I
No.
think, like, once you get to the third one, Taika was the right guy for that version of Thor,
Yeah.
who is now no longer the Shakespearean tragedy, but we're moving towards the more like metal 80s,
Right.
version of the character, which again is not a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing, but we will get to that. So as far as I'm concerned, I think this is some of the most fun you can have with a phase one origin film,
Yeah,
as it
that's
were,
and
or
that's the
just
best
an
part
origin
about
film
it.
in
Like,
general.
it's an origin film. It's an origin film that like doesn't have to spend a lot of time with its origin because it's the slow burn is the origin. It's like not like you got to get the 15 minutes origin story out of the way so we can get to the rest of the movie. No, the whole movie is kind of the origin of Thor as you get to it. So it's able to really put that together as a film, which is why I think it does work despite the two disjointed stories that have to like match up together and a kind of mash them up together to make it work. But it does work, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, I think it's is as far as we're concerned, this is the best version, and at least of what you're hoping for, this
Mm-hmm.
is about as best as you can ask for.
Absolutely, I think so too. Good work for them. I'm excited for them. I'm excited to see us continue throughout this. It's rekindled my love for the. I've never lost my love for the MCU, but getting to go through these again has been quite a blast so far already.
You're
Just
just
can't wait
kind
to
of
continue.
reminded, right?
Yeah. I can't wait to go next week, of course. Or next 2 weeks from now, Captain America: The First Avenger. Joe Johnston, I know you love that boy. So
Oh, man, I do. I'll tell you right now, man. I'm friggin' amped
yeah,
because this is one of my favorite MCU movies. It's my boy Joe Johnston.
highly
I
underrated.
think it's
Highly
the one
underrated.
that yeah, I think it gets lost in the shuffle in a way that's almost unfair. Um,
Because
I
Winter
I
Soldier is considered like is considered by many to be the best MCU film, and it's like so it
yeah,
overshadows First Avenger completely. And it's a standalone film. That's the thing; it's mostly a standalone film on its own. That's what's kind of
yeah.
weird. How, as much as someone who likes connectivity like I do, like this is really we're going to talk
Well,
about for
actually,
sure. But
we'll talk about it. It is, but it isn't
right,
because
no,
it ends
yeah,
up, it ends up like the way that they connect back is more by like family
family
lineage
lineages and
and
stuff.
like
Right?
I love
Like,
that though.
yeah,
I can't wait to talk about it. I'm so
yeah.
amped, but like this is a good movie, and 2011 was a good summer for Marvel, in
100%.
my opinion, when you had both this and Captain America coming out so close together, and both of them being as good as they are.
Right.
But this one in particular, I think it gets a little lost in the shuffle. But I think it honestly is one of the shining stars of what made Marvel more interesting in the end, because it proved that we could do more than just Iron Man and the Hulk. Like we were able to do something a little more fantastical, and we would see more of that in the next film.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, let's rate this bad boy. We on a scale of 1 to 11. We always turn things up to 11 here on PLD Projects. We begin all hovering around the same areas, and I'm kind of a little worried when I think about it, like as far as the future goes, because these are considered some of the lesser Marvel films, somewhat sometimes, and like we're still high and all around the same bunch at this point. Iron Man, we both gave an 8 out of 11. Incredible Hulk, I gave it 8 out of 11. You gave it 8.5. Iron Man 2, I gave a 7. You gave an 8. Where do you throw Thor in there at this point?
I'm gonna sound like a broken record. Jesus Christ. I feel like it's an 8. Like, it's a very
Two.
solid entry. Like, it's so good, it's so fun. It just lands the way that it needs to. I think it has some really nice highs. I think it does have its lulls and things that aren't always perfect, and that's okay. But again, it's a good movie, man. Like, it's a lot better than I think it gets credit for. And I think it's just very watchable. I'm giving this guy an 8.
I am also likewise giving us an 8 for the same exact reason. I feel like it's like we are broken records at this point. It's like
Yeah.
every MCU film is going to be an 8 out of 11. I mean, I know there's some that are higher. I'm sure there might be some that are lower, but I don't know at this point because they are all eminently watchable for sure. And I guess it's also kind of hard like comparing them. Like it's hard to compare a Thor movie with an Iron Man movie because they're both different types of movies, really. And they're superhero movies, but they're both very different styles. So it's kind of hard to sometimes do that. They have their own MCU style, which puts connectivity together, but they're different kind of features. So it's like more like your miles may vary. I might like this much more about Iron Man, but I like this part about Thor. Um, I don't know, man. It's hard to say, but I get an 8. I give it an 8 as well. So I'll
Yeah.
give you that.
See, you get it, and I do. Again, we might sound like a broken record, but I think it's very much in line with what I anticipate a lot of
Mhm.
these are going
Yeah.
forward.
I make fun of us if you want. They're all kind of that middle 8 of 11 kind of tier. And I don't even know if we're going to get very many low films. I don't think you and I have films in this watch through that we really don't at least enjoy
Yeah.
um, in some capacity. So find out, I guess. Yeah. We do have another ranking we got to do though. The Stan Lee cameo ranking. We got that going on.
Stan Lee driving the truck. Did it work?
Did it work? And Lee being the truck. I just called it the truck driver. That's what I called it. I was like, I have the we got Hef, Gamma Victim, Larry King, truck driver. That's what we have. Those are the
Truck
ones we have
driver,
so far.
number one.
Truck driver number one. No, okay, nice.
For now.
Okay.
Because it's the way he did it work, and it's just such a like funny way he does it, and he just looks so proud of himself, even though the back of his truck just ripped off.
That's fun. Okay, I still prefer. I put it at number 3. I still prefer the real when he's like impersonating the real life people, like the Hef and the Larry King thing. Still make me laugh, but I do see what you're saying. I can see that for sure. Did like that one as well.
Did it work? Just makes me laugh every time. It's so dumb, but it's so silly, and it makes me smile.
All right, where can the folks find you, PJ?
You guys can find me wherever social medias are sold at PJ_Campbell. Hanging out with this gentleman here on the podcast where we're talking movies every week, it seems like now. And, if it's November, we've been talking about Doctor Who. If it's not November for you, we will be talking Doctor Who.
Yes.
That begins next week. So look forward to that. Otherwise, just trucking along, surviving, just trying to get to Thunderbolts at this point. Like the world is a crazy place, but Thunderbolts is around the corner. So
absolutely. This is you can find me again, Paul_Denuzio on the Blue Sky. You can find me all over this podcast, this channel. Obviously, my name is on the tin, as Matty Gunner says. I do this podcast. I do a Star Wars podcast called Holy Snokes. I do a podcast called Review, which is about V. I do a Queen podcast with my sister YouTube channel. We have another podcast called Class Action, which is a monthly podcast to franchises or movies or actors up against each other. We're going to do The Accountant versus The Accountant 2 in May when that comes out. The end of April, Accountant 2 comes out. Let's see. Oh, I should mention this is a Patreon exclusive, like you said. So if you're watching this, you already hear. But if this is in November, December, and you want to see what it's all about, we probably got a lot more of these, already a lot waiting for you. You can join the Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Projects, or YouTube membership. We can get these early. This is going to be our MCU is going to go here first exclusively for at least probably 6 months, 5-6 months, depending on how it goes. So definitely join up with that. I guess that Doctor Who podcast this comes back as well. We try to do that as an after show. We don't do it as a podcast throughout the entirety of the year, but as an after show. I feel like I wanted to say something else, but
one of us join it up. One of us join it up.
Join it up. But if you can't, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. We love talking to you guys, hearing what you guys have to think about these things as well. So that'll do it. And we will see you next time.
Bye, friends.
Peace.